little bit windy outside. Good morning, Year 5. Okay, it's Monday morning. We're going to start today's lesson with our SPAG. Okay, so let's have a little look at that. And today we are going to be identifying the main clause in a sentence. So a main clause is a clause that makes sense on its own. All sentences must have at least one main clause. So here's an example. I was terrified when I saw the spider. Okay, some sentences can have more than one. Okay, you just need to look out for them. The way to find them is that the main clause can be used as a sentence by itself. It will make sense if you just read the main clause. So, I was terrified, full stop, makes sense on its own. When I saw the spider, does not make sense on its own. So, to identify the main clause, it's always good to read through the whole sentence and then just try and split it up. Which part makes sense on its own? Okay, so what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to underline the main clause in these sentences. Okay, so the first one is Zoe wanted her boat, so she ran to the graveyard. She was frightened of the gang when she saw them at the end of the street. As soon as it was dark, Zoe sneaked into town. Because it was cold, she put her sweater on. And then I'd like you to think of your own example. Okay, so if you pause the video, work through those four, and then just think of your own. Okay, I'll speak to you in a moment. Okay, good. Hopefully you've done that, and if we just have a little look at our answers, they should come up. So for the first two, the main clause starts the sentence. Zoe wanted her boat. She was frightened of the gang. So those both make sense on their own. Okay, so in 3 and 4, questions 3 and 4, the main clause comes at the end of the sentence, and they're separated by a comma. So as soon as it was dark, Zoe sneaked into town. Okay, that second clause makes sense by itself. Zoe sneaked into town. Okay, and the last one, she put her sweater on. Okay, so a little bit of introduction to our clauses, and we'll be reviewing our clause work this week throughout our SPAG. Fantastic. So, I hope you all had a good weekend. Hope you enjoyed your extended write on Friday. We're going to be reviewing chapter 1 again. Okay, so today we're really going to focus on identifying features of suspense writing. So what makes writing or a text full of suspense? So we're going to really hone in on the skills that we can use in our toolkits for writing this week. That's our focus. So what can you remember about creating a suspense in a narrative, or creating suspense in narrative? Can you think of any examples of how Marcus Sedgwick used suspense in chapter 1 of Floodland? Okay, so you might want to pause the video at the moment, have a discussion about that. How do you create suspense in writing? Okay, have a discussion, pause the video. Okay, welcome back. So here are some tips. Hopefully you will have come up with some of these. So these are really useful tips. You could hide a threat. Okay, so something's going to happen, it comes out of nowhere. You could hide a threat. You could use an abandoned setting or lull the reader into a cozy setting. So everything's kind of feeling nice and comfortable, and then all of a sudden something happens to disturb that calm feeling. You could make the setting sound dangerous and use weather or the time of day or night to create atmosphere. You could use the senses to explore something ominous. Do you remember what that word ominous meant? So something that is threatening, a looming danger. Okay, you could surprise the reader with something unexpected. You could reveal the character's thoughts. So what are they thinking about? Okay, are they starting to become anxious or nervous? You could slow the action down by using sentences of 3 and drop in clauses. So that means you shorten your sentences, and we'll maybe look at some examples of that this week. Okay, right, let's move on. So what we're going to do now, we're going to watch a clip if it comes up. Goodness. And here are some tips about writing using suspense. So you might want to make some notes when you're watching this clip, and let's hope it works. Okay. Here we go.
What makes a good horror story? Sure, you could throw in some hideous monsters, fountains of blood, and things jumping out from every corner. But as classic horror author H.P. Lovecraft wrote, the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. And writers harness that fear not by revealing horrors, but by leaving the audience hanging in anticipation of them. That is, in a state of suspense. The most familiar examples of suspense come from horror films and mystery novels. What's inside the haunted mansion? Which of the dinner guests is the murderer? But suspense exists beyond these genres. Will the hero save the day? Will the couple get together in the end? And what is the dark secret that causes the main character so much pain? The key to suspense is that it sets up a question, or several, that the audience hopes to get an answer to, and delays that answer while maintaining their interest and keeping them guessing. So what are some techniques you can use to achieve this in your own writing? Limit the point of view. Instead of an omniscient narrator who can see and relay everything that happens, tell the story from the perspective of the characters. They may start off knowing just as little as the audience does, and as they learn more, so do we. Classic novels like Dracula, for example, are told through letters and diary entries where characters relate what they've experienced and fear what's to come. Next, choose the right setting and imagery. Old mansions or castles with winding halls and secret passageways suggest that disturbing things are being concealed. Nighttime, fog, and storms all play similar roles in limiting visibility and restricting characters' movements. That's why Victorian London is such a popular setting. And even ordinary places and objects can be made sinister, as in the Gothic novel Rebecca, where the flowers at the protagonist's new home are described as blood red. 3. Play with style and form. You can build suspense by carefully paying attention not just to what happens, but how it's conveyed and paced. Edgar Allan Poe conveys the mental state of the narrator in The Telltale Heart with fragmented sentences that break off suddenly. And other short declarative sentences in the story create a mix of breathless speed and weighty pauses. On the screen, Alfred Hitchcock's cinematography is known for its use of extended silences and shots of staircases to create a feeling of discomfort. 4. Use dramatic irony. You can't just keep the audience in the dark forever. Sometimes, suspense is best served by revealing key parts of the big secret to the audience, but not to the characters. This is a technique known as dramatic irony, where the mystery becomes not what will happen, but when and how the characters will learn. In In the classic play Oedipus Rex, the title character is unaware that he has killed his own father and married his mother. But the audience knows, and watching Oedipus gradually learn the truth provides the story with its agonizing climax. And finally, the cliffhanger. Beware of overusing this one. Some consider it a cheap and easy trick, but it's hard to deny its effectiveness. This is where a chapter, episode, volume, or season cuts off right before something crucial is revealed, or in the midst of a dangerous situation with a slim chance of hope. The wait, whether moments or years, makes us imagine possibilities about what could happen next, building extra suspense. The awful thing is almost always averted, creating a sense of closure and emotional release. But that doesn't stop us from worrying and wondering the next time the protagonists face near certain disaster. TED-Ed is a nonprofit. If you value our work, please consider supporting it on patreon.com/TEDEd.
Okay. Let's do that. Good. That was a really informative clip there to do with creating suspense. So hopefully you've got a lot from that. You might want to pause the video now if you're in the bubble or at home and just have a discussion about some of those things. Okay, the things that I really pulled out from that is to create suspense really is about the fear of the unknown. And in our first chapter of Floodland, there are a lot of unknown things going on. So lots of kind of questions are being put forward, but not a lot of answers are being given. Okay, so we've got a hero or heroine who is Zoe. There's a kind of secret there, a secret about her past almost, and you know, the secret about her future, what's going to happen to her as well. And very much the settings are important in that first chapter. Okay, so this lesson today you're going to be looking a little bit more closely at that chapter. So what I'd like you to do is you're going to use your suspense toolkit, which will be in the resources, and also chapter 1 of Floodland is also in the resources. So I'd like you to read through and see what you can identify using your suspense toolkit. So here it is. You've got a checklist, so you can either do a tally in your checklist part, or you could tick when you found examples and see if you can either highlight on your sheet or write them into your book some examples of those things. So let's just review that quickly. At the top of the list was to hide a threat. Okay, to hide a threat, so making something creepy, something's going to happen that threatens your main character. So use an abandoned setting or create something cozy for contrast. Making the setting sound dangerous. So that could be through a description of the building. How does Marcus Sedgwick create that? He does it very well. Use the weather changes or day and night. Okay, that changes the mood or the atmosphere of what's being read. So use the senses to describe something ominous. So something ominous. Ominous means a threatening or something threatening. Okay, a situation or a thing. Surprise the reader with something unexpected. Okay, you weren't expecting that to happen, so it kind of makes you jump. Reveal the character's thoughts. So are there any moments in chapter 1 where we get a clearer picture of what Zoe is thinking about, how she's feeling, okay, her emotions. And finally, to slow the action by writing short sentences. So an example would be, it was cold, it was dark. All was quiet. So 3 short sentences like that. Okay, so things that I'd like you to remember whilst we're doing this. You must identify the features of suspense writing. You should highlight examples of this or write them down. You could suggest different threats that could appear in the chapter. Okay, so chapter 1. For an example, a roof beginning to collapse would mean that Zoe would need to get Leica maybe out of the boat shed really quickly, so it puts you on a timer. Okay, and the final one, you might want to write your own suspense sentences that would fit into the text. Okay, so create something new. Right, well, I hope you have a really good time with that. Obviously, you've got to read that first chapter through again. So that's there in the resources for you to use. And I will speak to you later on, guys. So have a really good lesson, have a really good day, and I'll see you later. Bye.